On Facebook. Whenever you're ready, Stella.
Yes, I'm ready. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. We have a wonderful, wonderful person and artist, Loel Kathmann, with us. And I have to tell you a wonderful story that I really am very inspired by. Um, Loel started painting 5 years ago, and she's a mother of a child with autism. And she paints these beautiful, beautiful, transparent paintings that inspire a lot of people who are in the same position as she is. She's a homestay mom, and her work is beautiful. And I hope she will tell us more about that. But our heart goes with her, and it's just another proof how powerful art is. And we are very blessed to have you, Loel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stella.
Every
Thanks so much for having me today.
It's a pleasure. If you tell
Stella,
us
we're
something
gonna
about
share
yourself.
first. I'm sorry. So we're gonna proceed with slideshow first, well, so that our guest would know about your social handles, especially Instagram. We'd love our guests to connect with you, even as we do the demo today and some of the artwork. So we'll do a share screen. There we go. Everyone, meet Luelle. And in case you have not followed her on Instagram, this is her handle. It's more_artio. The next couple of slides, Luelle, are some of the artworks that you sent to us earlier. And of course, we want to hear a line or two for each of the artworks here, beginning with this piece.
So this is a good one to start with because it'll sort of speak to the demo piece that we're going to do today. This was primarily carmine. I was getting to know a new color. I combined it with ultramarine blue and quinacridone gold. So I typically work with a limited palette because I find that limited palette allows a greater freedom of creativity. So, and then next, if you don't mind. So these yellow florals, I'm really known for these delicate layers, and we're going to demo some of that today as well. The flowers are really a recurrent theme in my work. For one, they're just lovely. You can tell good stories with them, but they embrace that moment. They have a real kapow. They're fragile and transient. Embrace the moment. They curl up at night to rest. Some of them follow the sun for the day, like the sunflowers. But my favorite flower trick is that a lot of plants will bloom under stress. And I really love that lesson of sort of survival hinting at desperation. So a lot of my florals get just this little touch of struggle and strength. So, and the next one, if you don't mind.
This one and the next slide, well, are the recent additions.
So this was fun. This was Wanda. It was a fried green tomatoes reference. I've never done something like this before, and I had a lot of nerves. So this was my piece saying, just be bold and brave and embrace it, and try my orange because that was new too.
Come here, Leo. Leo. Leo, here. Sit.
The next one. We'll be using a lot of these colors today, actually, the phthalo green or phthalo turquoise, sorry, and the green gold. I do a little bit of a watercolor pencil sometimes with the work as well, always little nice splashes. So yeah, this layering is just a lovely thing I just keep coming back to. This is a favorite. So this is actually ultramarine blue gouache that I mix with walnut ink. This is on rough press paper, and all these lovely effects really happen. It separates into these just beautiful sort of milky blues and greens, and the ultramarine settles into the grooves of the paper. It kind of does this fractally thing. So this is something I come back to again and again. I really love that combination of the gouache and walnut ink. So this is a sunset on the Columbia River. So we live close to the Columbia River. It's kind of a big deal here. We get a lot of wind storms and we get a lot of wildfire smoke. So I wanted to capture that sort of feeling of the wind whipped waves and the fiery sunsets. So again, it's gouache, walnut ink, a little bit of watercolor on the mineral paper, which is a paper made of stone, actually.
Can you tell us more about that paper? I'm familiar with Yupo, but I'm not familiar with mineral paper.
I happen to have some right here. Hold on. Sure. So it's made from limestone. It's 80% calcium carbonate and 20%, oh, is it backwards? 20% HDPE. It's calcium carbonate is actually the same stuff that pearls are made of. So it actually looks and feels in your hand like these very thin, silky, beautiful sheets of pearl. And yeah, it's made for watercolor. It's a beautiful surface, but it's finicky. And it's fair to share that I threw away nearly the entire first package because it's a new material. It's kind of finicky. It took me a little bit to find my way with it. And so just play, and keep painting. If there's sort of one message from today, it would be there is no wasted paint, there is no wasted paper, there is no wasted time, there is only learning, and just keep playing and painting. And that is how I eventually, found this sort of nice layer, ethereal sort of technique with this mineral paper.
And who makes that paper? What brand is it?
It's a Yasutomo.
Thank you.
So the caution is that
did you say it was sticky or stinky?
I don't think I said it was finicky. it's just it's neither, but yeah, not stinky, not yeah, it's just very it's smooth, right? It's a little more absorbent than Yupo, but less absorbent than, say, a hot press paper. The cautions I would have with it is that it does lift really readily if you get it wet, and it will warp if you get it above, say, 145 degrees Fahrenheit, so 65 Celsius. So it's not art for your steam room or your hot car, but it's a beautiful surface. It's really fun to work with. I do mostly just the abstracts with it. I've seen, I think her handle is Lee Watercolors, has done portraits. That's some kind of sorcery to do with this paper. It's amazing.
Could you please show the name again?
Yeah, sure.
On the bottom.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes,
you're very welcome. The other caution I would have is particle size. Sometimes when I'm working with it, it can get kind of thin. And I have found that if I'm working with, say, a Crematech or something with a larger particle, you'll notice, I have an example actually. I do use golds with it. I'll add those last because you want to make sure that the product is going to hold together and that you have enough binder to keep the larger particles on the surface of the paper. And to make sure I haven't misjudged, at the end of each piece, I have a dedicated sable that I run across the page just to make sure that everything is bound as it should be. So some people I've seen, I think her handle is Makiko Sharik. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing, but she does some sealing with hers. I don't seal mine. I actually, it was a year before I would even gift, much less sell pieces. I left them under a window with the shades up. I let the temperature fluctuate. I ran a humidifying cooler in this room to make it humid. I tested it, compared it against the cotton paper to see how sturdy it would be, and it's a lot of fun. So thank you for asking.
What is the weight, Loel?
It comes in 2 weights. I have to look at the package. It's 100 pounds. It comes in a thicker weight, which I've tried, but I actually really like the delicate nature of the thinner paper.
I've used it and it is so thin and delicate, but it dries flat. It's amazing. It's really fun.
Does it buckle while you're painting on it when it's wet? Does it buckle?
A little bit, but it'll flatten right back out. It's actually pretty forgiving.
What are you going to do and show us today, Loel?
So should I switch cameras? You guys are ready to paint? Let me switch cameras, pull my hair back, we'll get serious.
Don't get too serious.
All right, bear with me 1 second. When I switch cameras, we have a little bit of a mirroring, which I will remedy. I'll put some light on.
It's wonderful that you're exploring the colors and play with them. And I know you participate a lot in our Thursday sessions where you learn about the colors.
I confess that I like Thursdays almost more than Fridays. I learned so much on the Thursday sessions. I really do.
That's wonderful. It really is very informative.
Thank you. And yeah, I just can't emphasize the play. So for the layering, if this is maybe a technique that's new, something you want to learn and try, there's a specific tool set that I recommend starting with, which would be 300-pound paper, quinacridone gold, and enanthrone blue. It's just a really, really forgiving pigment set. And because the process uses so much water, the 300-pound paper will just make it a lot easier. That said, I'm going to use a combination of blues and greens and thinner paper because the blues and greens I tested, they're going to show up really well on camera and help you see what it is exactly that I'm doing. And the 140-pound paper is because every petal must be completely dry before the next one goes on. And so this way it will decrease our dry time tremendously. So the palette today, again, I like a limited palette. That freedom of creativity that comes with it really speaks to me. So we're going to use phthalo turquoise, a mixture of carbazole violet and phthalo blue green shade, a little bit of green gold, some zoisite mixed with blue apatite genuine, and some iridescent gold. And there is a method to the madness. My brain makes better decisions than just my eyeballs. And so I love to look at the pigments listed inside of each of the sticks or tubes or whatever it is that you love to use. So the phthalo turquoise shares a pigment with the phthalo blue green shade and with the green gold. So we'll have a lot of color harmony going on with this.
And do you use sticks, Loel? Tell us, how do you prepare the sticks to the tubes?
I love the sticks because you can activate them in water like I've done in my little pans that I have ready to go for painting. You can draw with them. You can draw the pigment straight from the stick with a wet brush and get just really, really strong color on your pieces. So I actually will, if I have a color inside of a tube and a new stick comes out, I'll actually replace that color or supplement it with the sticks. I just find you can do a lot of good tricks with them. So yeah. All right, so the first tip for doing this, if I were using the quinacridone gold that I had recommended, you could actually just go wet on to dry. That particular mix of pigments will actually lift really readily. If I did that with the phthalo turquoise, I would be left with a little line that maybe I don't want. I don't usually tape off. This was just to separate my palette from the rest of my paper. And I don't usually sketch. I just kind of wing it. I will, though, come in much of the time and mark kind of a focal point. So we're going to do a third and a third and put the center of our flower about there. I have just a bunch of different sizes of these silver black velvet brushes. I'm just going to use rounds mostly today. And so for our first petal, I'm going to put down water first, again, because the phthalo turquoise is a little bit staining. If I just went on to dry, I would get this sort of initial stroke of paint typically. And so I'm going to put a little bit of water down. And I'm leaving gaps. It's probably a little bit difficult to see, but once I put the stronger colors on, you'll start to see these gaps really stand out. And the gaps are really important for later. So I just have my water. I'm going to add my pigment. And this is just a little dish. It's pretty watery. a little dish of phthalo turquoise that I mixed from a watercolor stick earlier. And speaking of calming, you can already kind of probably even hear my nerves melting away once I have a brush in my hand. So I've seen this done similar things a few ways. One is to start with water and then trace around the edge with your color. That can be pretty lovely. Another, let's see. So I'm just coming out to the edge. I want to have a nice even color across. So I was saying the water then along the edges, how some people get a similar effect. Some people will put down just a nice thin wash of paint, let it dry, and come back and put another wash over. And those are some other layering techniques I've seen. I really want to get kind of a glassy finish. So I want the interior of my petals to be a solid single transparent color with a very fine line around the edges. So I'm just making my color nice and even. And now I'm actually going to rinse it. If I was doing a smaller petal for my rinse, I would actually use a thirsty brush to pick up the excess water. I'm going to use some little bits of paper towel today to kind of speed things up just a little bit. I'm not putting any pressure on the paper. I'm just adding water, and then I'll tilt just to get a little rinse of that bulk of the color. So this first petal, we're just going to do a nice ombre effect with my center purpley blue and my phthalo turquoise petal. I'll take a smaller brush to make sure that I get all along these edges just to make that line nice and fine. And then I'll add my darker center color. So you're going to really start to see the little gaps that I've left shine. So I'm going to highlight these. And add my darker color here. Get a nice tilt. And be mindful that I'm picking up any of this excess water. And then we'll completely dry it. So I tried doing this a number of ways. You know, I tried going, Rachel Ray makes a lasagna style where I had papers with different numbers of petals lined up and I could add the next one, but the progression, it didn't feel right. The progression just lost some of the organic nature to it. So we are going to use the hairdryer today. We are going to embrace the hairdryer and unapologetically celebrate it as a tool in the watercolorist toolbox today. That said, I've been kind of careful how I've chosen the pigments. I want this petal to stay nice and glassy. Not all pigments are friends with the hairdryer. For example, this purpley blue is going to kind of, it wants to pull apart just on its own. And the drying is going to kind of exacerbate that a bit. but I like that. I want the speckles of white to show through and add some texture to the piece. You'll also see I'll use the air to move these pigments to where I want them to live. I'll actually use the air to move them around. So I'm starting low, and at the end, I'll kick it up a little bit.
I appreciate her conversation and discussion of the use of the hairdryer as a tool for the watercolorists. How she knows there's a tension with that, but she's still willing to use it.
I'm so impressed the hairdryer color matches the paint. She's like coordinated.
It depends on the techniques you're using. I mean, many people use, and there are no rules to use or not to use a hair dryer. Depends what you would like to achieve. So I don't believe in limiting in making art.
Thank you, Stella. I agree.
Does anybody know, is Loel's paper flat, or does she have it on a tilt?
It looks like flat, but she also lifts it up and move it around and tilts it. But it looks flat.
Yeah. Thank you.
We had a question asking what paper is Loel using for this demo, and the answer was mineral paper, but I thought she said cotton.
No.
So the mineral paper is just sort of the mini lecture on that. I apologize, I should have clarified. So I recommend if you're starting and learning this technique to use the 300 pound. I'm using 140 pounds, and that's because it'll dry faster for us today. So I love to paint on blocks, and as long as I have it kind of tilted over here, I will actually save these backer boards. So when I do say watercolor on top of Sumnagashi or work with the mineral paper, I'll use that as a support. So I keep and recycle the backs of these. All right, so if it's cool to the touch or has any bubbling, then you need to dry it just a little bit more. I think that we're good to go. So next we're gonna do a 2-color petal and start adding some texture with our Primatex mix. So again, I'm gonna leave a lot of gaps. And you'll start to see how those overlaps can be really pretty. And this is my phthalo turquoise. And I couldn't quite hear it as I was drawing, but I think I heard someone say something about appreciating that I had owned the hairdryer controversy, I guess.
Yeah.
So phthalo turquoise along the top. I'm going to drop some green gold into the bottom. And then I'm just going to tilt and rinse it, just as before.
Claudia, I asked you to do this. You can't do this. You do realize that, don't you? I expect you to stay until it's time for you to go home.
You achieve beautiful transparency, Loel. That's really very delightful.
Thank you very much, Stella. So you're starting to see a little bit of the prettiness come out with these overlaps that we left. Someone asked me on Instagram how I came about these techniques. And honestly, it's just play. Just play, 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 play. And you get a new color, make a big mess. And always inside that mess, there's gonna be little pieces that you're like, oh, when that green gold passed through the rhodonite, it did this gorgeous, gorgeous thing. Or when I put too much water on, all of a sudden I got this edge. And so just play. What is the Einstein quote? Maybe I already said it. Play is the highest form of research.
That is absolute wonderful meditation.
Yes. Definitely calming. All right. So now you see we've got our fine line of the green gold, our fine line of the phthalo turquoise. I'll add a little bit of my darker mix. And again, this darker mix, I picked the phthalo to complement, the phthalo blue to complement the phthalo turquoise, but I wanted to increase the purple so it has a spicier conversation with this green gold. So there was some method of the madness with the contrast. Again, just picking up the excess so we can dry it faster.
And you use a different brush for every color too. Is this to keep really the color very clean for the transparency?
Yes, I was the kid who did not like to mix the Play-Doh. So yeah, when I have such a limited palette, I can use a different brush for each color. And I actually have a dedicated rinse water for the body of my petals. I want to keep those nice and clean. I keep a rinse water for the body of my petals, a rinse water for my gold, and a rinse water for everything else. So I'll tilt this. I'm going to partially dry this petal. And again, when people ask, do I paint flat or on an incline? Yes, all of it. I move the paper a lot. So I'm going to be careful to not get blooms. Sometimes I like them, don't get me wrong. I will intentionally make a bloom and really embrace it. So the partial dry was so that when I add my Primatech mix, I want it to stay where I put it without traveling very far. So when I said my flowers kind of all get a little touch of struggle and strength, maybe this guy got a little bit torn up through here. And I'm adding these in places that I'm not going to overlap, or at least won't overlap very much later on, because these will just lift right out if I put them in the center. Just put that where we want it to live. Sometimes instead of the Primatex for some texture, I'll use gouache, which you can get a really nice, it's almost I call them blown glass flowers. This really transparent petal with these pops of opacity, and that can just be really lovely as well with the gouache.
watching Loel do her demo, it really how important it is to know the colors. And that is a wonderful thing what we have on Thursdays to learn about the colors and what they do and all their qualities. That is really essential for Loel's technique to know her colors.
I appreciated her analysis, how she's working with a limited palette, but each of the colors has a relationship, and hearing her analysis and strategy with it.
Yeah, and that comes from knowing her colors very well.
This would be a good strategy too for playing with it. If you aren't as an accomplished artist, this way you can see what it does. And I like the hair dryer, by the way. I like fixing it where you want it to be, the colors.
Oh, I think we're good. So this next one, I'm going to show you how to get a fine line with a pop of color inside. And we're also going to add some of our texture to it as well. And again, I'm leaving gaps that I'll really highlight my contrast color and my texture.
It's a whole new way of painting flowers. I love it.
Thank you.
So many wonderful ways.
Yes, huh?
The beauty of art.
Yes.
We joke at home that I really effectively misuse all the materials.
I think an encouraging thing I heard was the only misuse of materials is to not use them at all.
Exactly.
And we have a question on the Zoom side actually asking if you're using a reference photo or if this is from your imagination.
No, all from my brain, all imagination. But again, all about telling the stories, right? Again, that struggle and strength and the florals, blooming under pressure, blooming under stress. Okay, so we'll add our ombre. So I'm just tilting to let the color travel where I want it to live, get all my little pigment particles in their homes, and then picking up as much of the excess. Again, I'm trying to lower the dry time so we can get through the entirety of the piece. My hope is that if you were able to watch a replay and practice some of the techniques. So with that partial drying, now I'm just going to come in and drop this pop of color. So I'll get this nice, beautiful phthalo turquoise outline and this pop of green gold. And then come back in and add some texture as well.
Well, as much as you say it's a play, but you still exercise the principles of design and elements. And where do you have that knowledge from? Does she hear us when the... No, she doesn't.
I'm sorry. Was there a question while I couldn't
Yes,
hear it over there?
it is. I'm watching you doing it. You have a knowledge of design. And I was thinking, you call it as a play, but you still exercise the principles of design and elements. So you do have that knowledge of design.
Not officially. It's luck primarily, it's just a lot of play and making things and seeing what feels right. My background's actually science. By training, I'm a scientist.
Yeah, I heard that, but you were also doing jewelry, you said. So
yeah,
yes.
I think it's just a lot of practice, making a lot of things that don't have good design, initially figuring out what actually does work, and then doing that again. So what is the quote? You have to make a lot of bad art to make some good art. But again, it's all learning. So this guy, we're just going to add a little pop of green to kind of balance things out. I'm not going to make it, complicated, just a little touch of green, no ombre, no texture, just some color balance. You'll notice that I'm tilting my paper this direction because I want to minimize the runaways. I'll even dry it on a tilt so that any of this blue that was trying to escape when I put the water back down stays over here where I want it. And again, because this petal is smaller, I'm just using my thirsty brush to pick up that excess water.
Loel,
Yes.
it's looking really lovely and delicate, but I can't help thinking I'm seeing a butterfly landing on the yellow bit of a flower.
Some of them do turn out butterfly-esque.
When at the beginning I thought it looked like two blue Halloween faces, and I thought, my goodness, what is this going to be? So I'm hanging in for the end. I want to see what it's going to finish up like.
Have hope. I think it'll be all right.
I'm sure it'll be fine, but it's challenging on the way.
Trouble, it's got a really nice delicacy to it.
Yes, it does. And beautiful transparency, the way in layering, it's a beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It really is a masterclass in layering.
Yeah. Wow.
In watercolor, sorry, in watercolor, do we still call it glazing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or is that an oil technique? I don't know.
No,
Yeah,
glazing is very much watercolor technique.
Right.
Knowing when to go into the wet paint and how much water to put, and then drying it and layering. Yeah, she has a very good skill doing that.
Yeah.
I can never do flowers because I go in too heavy with it, and it loses its delicacy.
Yeah.
Patience.
In a blow dryer.
I've got my lightsaber.
And don't pick a difficult flower.
Like a
I also have that challenge, Ian, at the same time. So I wonder maybe our secret is to just draw the backgrounds really, really dark. Then we don't overkill on the flower.
It depends on your, I believe it's very much temperament that we, learning ourselves and timing and how much, I don't have much patience. So that's, when you paint, you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
So this last petal, a lot of gaps, giving it a little bit of a different shape to add some interest.
This is amazing.
I started pretty straightforward, introduced, the more tips and tricks in the middle, and I'm closing out with the more straightforward petals.
Beautiful colors.
Thank you. Yellow turquoise is hands down one of my favorites. You can see the stick has had some love. So again, not putting any pressure, just adding water to rinse back, and you're going to see this lovely little green gold line appearing through this petal. And you start to see how all those gaps made some difference, add some real interest to the centers.
Loel, how do you make sure that you don't add too much water that it drops off the end of the petal?
Well, I had nightmares about that happening today.
It's happened to me.
Yeah, it's happened to me plenty. I'm like, there's one thing that I can't have happen today. It's dropping off the end of the
Well, I'm very impressed that you managed not to do it because I think I would have done it.
Well, not yet. Still time.
That's okay. It will be a happy.
I'm not jinxing you, I promise.
It will be a happy accident.
That's right.
It'll be the stem.
Truly mastering layering, Loel.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So you take the water. You take the water out, then you put more water on, and you take it out again. And I'm amazed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Stella, a compliment from you. I am gonna just be smiling all day. You guys have no idea.
Absolutely.
Wow.
We have a quick request if you could repeat the type of brushes that you're using.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I just have a bunch of different, they're just rounds. I'm just using the silver black velvet today. They do a really good job of being gentle with the paper and picking up when I need them to. I enjoy them. Okay, so we're going to dry this and then add some texture.
I'm still obsessed with the color theory over here. I think it's really interesting that she's working primarily with with the phthalo family, with the quinacridone family, the green gold, and then she has also popped in the Primatech to add the granulation. So she's not just playing with transparency, but she's also playing with granulation.
The contrast of all of it, and it is the cool and the warm and the the transparent with the granulation, all of the contrast. That's really beautiful to move your eye around the painting.
Carolyn is commenting that this is amazing. I'm going to run and get my paints right after we're finished. That's just what I needed to get me going. Thank you, Loel. And I agree. And I'm looking at the colors you're choosing specifically for recreating this at the home studio. The strategy used for the colors of transparency plus Primatech are part of what allows the amazing success that you have. It's good for me to see this. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was the intention. I hope maybe someone would go out and say, "Oh, I will try this." So I'm trying to do it very stepwise to allow that. So I love paint splashes. We're 2 steps away. I'll add some colors, paint splashes, and come up with some bold. One of my favorite ways, I'm doing really well on time. So I'll share that one of my favorite ways to add paint splashes is with these dagger brushes, right? Even when I do a larger painting, sometimes I'll put them on the floor and you can load your brush up and kind of take aim and get these nice big splatters. we're going to do some juicy splashes for today. Sometimes I'll even take the same brush, dip it in the water just a little bit so I can come back and get a lighter shade of the same color. We'll do some little light taps with green gold. And a little bit of this darker little Primatech mix. So we'll call that good. And again, in the interest of drying, the ones that got a little bit more water, I'll pick up because I do want to dry this before we put the gold on.
We have a question on the Facebook side from Shilpi asking, what color would you use with pinks and reds? Thank you.
So if you dilute the carmine enough, you can coax it to layer. For reds, I actually make a mix out of, let me see, I'll grab my notes so I don't remember incorrectly. I think it was Pyrrole Red, Permanent Alizarin, is it Alizarin or Alizarin? I've heard it said both ways. Crimson and Quin Violet. So that little combination will actually give you a red that layers pretty well, surprisingly. So the last step is I love to add a little bit of sparkle. Everything gets just a little bit, typically iridescent gold at the end. And part of that is a nod to kintsugi, the art of healing broken things with gold, broken pieces of pottery with gold. I love that idea of healing broken things with gold. So it's pretty, but also has a little deeper meaning. So I like to add a little bigger touch. Sometimes it's a focal point. And this is my pot of gold. I have a large Rolex carousel that my friend Tiffany Erdmansik turned me on to. And just tons of colors in it with these little removable cups. It's pretty fantastic. And then this is my gold brush. I have no idea where this thing came from. I think I've had it since I was a kid, and I've tried replacing it with newer brushes. None of them are quite right. So this is probably my most valuable brush because it makes the perfect little gold dots. Certainly not my most costly brush, but definitely my most valuable brush. Just a little bit in the centers. Add some texture and pop of healing.
Well, we have 5 minutes more left. And we so appreciate. Yes, there's still a lot of 5 minutes is a long time.
I'll hit this really quickly so that the watery gold doesn't pick up the blue from underneath.
And I've seen also beautiful calligraphy you do on the top of the painting, or pulling the water and pigment and spreading it around in a beautiful gestural calligraphy.
Yes, how do you do that?
Let's see. There are 4 minutes. Loel, we were talking about, I've seen in your paintings beautiful calligraphy, and it's a wonderful finishing touch. And do you take the pigment and water from somewhere, or you do it just freehand? It adds such a wonderful touch.
Thank you. It's a technique my friend Deanna taught me. It's sort of a secret code in watercolor. So you sort of hold an intention in your mind. It can be therapeutic even, maybe something that you're trying to let go of. And so I'll scoot this out of the way and show you really quickly. It's just, this is my favorite brush. This is just a connoisseur 3/8 dagger brush. I have some different sizes of dagger brush, but this is kind of my go-to. And so I just load up. It helps if you stand, maybe if you're able, or put your paper far away so that you paint from your elbow or your shoulder more so than from your wrist. So you can get a nice loose stroke. And yeah, I just, something like this. Just squiggles, right?
That's nice.
That's where, thank you. That's where those come from. So yeah, this is it. Somehow they're always a little prettier when you put a matte on. I usually have mine with a little bit of a gold edge when I frame them for myself at home. But yeah, you can see we've got this little nice blue edge with the pop of green inside, this layering and how all those gaps came together in the end, the texture, the healing gold. And this is a very Loel-esque, struggle and strength, blooming under stress floral. I want to say, if I haven't already before, I look forward to these every Friday, and what a treat it is to be on the opposite side. I really can't thank you enough. And Stella, thank you so much for hosting me today. I've just really, this is a treat. You guys have no idea.
We are very happy to thank you very much, Loel. It was a wonderful demo, and I think many people are inspired by you. And also your approach to art and the way you use it and your techniques. It is a wonderful demo, and thank you very much. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it, and many people shared that they cannot wait to go and pick their brushes and colors and play. Thank you. It was just wonderful to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Loel. Thank you.
Thank you for everybody joining us and join. That is